Yesterday morning, James O'Keefe and Project Veritas released a groundbreaking and viral story, quite possibly the biggest story of the year so far, that ABC News had an interview, had photographs, had corroborating witnesses. They had the Jeffrey Epstein story 3 years ago. The video shows a frustrated and candid moment where ABC News anchor Amy Robach talks about everything they had. She even said, "We had everything." Now, ABC News issued a statement that, in my opinion, is wholly inadequate. For one, they say, we couldn't corroborate the details. We've never stopped investigating. Well, the details have been corroborated now. Why hasn't ABC News published that interview they've been sitting on for 3+ years? It also doesn't address statements made by Amy Robach, where she says the official story about how Epstein's life ended was she doesn't believe it. I have to be careful about how I talk about this. They addressed nothing. They gave a generic statement. And they didn't address the fact that Amy said we had everything, and on Clinton as well. Now, some people have brought up a very important point. 3 years ago, that was the election. Perhaps bad news about Clinton could have hurt Hillary's chances. Maybe that's what they were thinking. I don't know. But as we can see now, Fox News reports mainstream media largely ignores ABC Epstein scandal. CNN's scant coverage is lampooned. Washington Post was forced to acknowledge, I shouldn't say forced, but I have to because they've disparaged James O'Keefe in the past, that they were surprised. This video published by Veritas itself was newsworthy, and they didn't expect it. But also, it was airtight. And many people started asking the question, why is it that it was Project Veritas of all organizations that had to release this footage? Well, here's what you need to do. You need to go on YouTube and look up old Daily Show footage with Jon Stewart as he discussed what James O'Keefe had been doing. Jon Stewart did not smear or belittle James O'Keefe. He made silly jokes, referring to him as the Ashton Kutcher of conservatives. But when it came to the substance of James O'Keefe's exposés, Jon Stewart criticized Acorn and NPR. It seemed like Jon was rather fair. Today, James O'Keefe is smeared and lied about relentlessly to the point where he's actually won several lawsuits. What we've learned and what we're seeing now with this cover-up, and I got a bunch of stories to show you. The media does not want to be held accountable. Even if it comes to Epstein, they will fight tooth and nail to make sure that no one knows they get this wrong, but more importantly, that they are more interested in protecting powerful elites than speaking truth to power. They had every opportunity to tell the story, and only when they were finally forced to, because Epstein was being arrested and was jailed, only when they were forced to did these stories come out. But I ask you, ABC, first, we'll read this story, and Fox News brings up a lot of really interesting points. The first question I have, before we challenge all the other outlets, why hasn't ABC News aired the interview by now, right? Epstein's story, for the most part, kind of faded away for a while. They could have published in August when NPR was asking about it. They certainly could have corroborated all of those details, and certainly after the man was no longer alive, they had much less to worry about. They could have easily told this story. More importantly, when it comes to news, if you have a story that big, you can always enter with a disclaimer that either this is not, confirmed by multiple sources, or that the estate has denied it, or that lawyers have told us the story is not true. However, according to witnesses, here's what they've claimed. There are ways to report a story of this magnitude. They did not do it, and they didn't even do it yet. That says to me, the media wanted to cover this up. They could have told the story we all know now. But now what we're seeing, in my opinion, is the media, they want to cover up what is being called a cover-up itself, as exemplified by all of these outlets refusing to talk about it. Let's take a look at what Fox News has to say. And this is mind-blowing to me that I'm going to Fox News for this story because no one else is doing it. Before we get started, make sure you head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's multiple ways you can give, but the most important thing you can do is share this video. As I stated yesterday, man, this story is being swept under the rug. And don't take my word for it. I've got some actual journalists challenging the fact that ABC News refuses to acknowledge this. Okay, there is widespread left and right that this story is being swept under the rug. That means there's great risk to talking about it. If you think I'm doing a good job and you think this story is important, please consider sharing the video. Before we get into a credible journalist's statement challenging I'm not saying that Fox News is not credible. I'm saying we've got a journalist who's well respected and works for Huffington Post who's challenging this. And even the Washington Post has written about it. Yet there are still organizations refusing to acknowledge that they are carrying water, they are covering up for powerful elites. Let's read this story. Fox News reports, mainstream media outlets have largely ignored the Project Veritas bombshell that ABC News killed a story that would have exposed the now deceased Jeffrey Epstein 3 years ago, with some having themselves been recently embarrassed by Project Veritas and others still smarting from their own alleged Me Too cover-ups. Think about it. How they tried to cover up Lauer, how they tried to cover up Weinstein. The other issue, the more important issue is, even though the Washington Post has had their spat with Veritas, they wrote about it, acknowledging it was airtight, newsworthy. Credit where credit is due. I respect that. Fox News found no coverage on CNN, MSNBC, CBS News, or NBC News from noon through midnight Eastern on Tuesday, while the story was lighting up social media. During that same time, Fox News covered the scandal on 5 different programs, including its entire primetime lineup. Even the Daily Beast, which is a left-leaning, is very pro-Clinton, that's my understanding, even they covered it. And what was mind-blowing to me is that they covered it and did not smear Veritas. Typically what they'll do when a Veritas story comes out is they'll accuse James of all of the worst things in the book, extreme smears, lies, misrepresentations. In this instance, they just said a right-wing group. That's it. I think it's fair to criticize Veritas for being biased, but that's fine. I think everybody has a bias, and I think it's fair to criticize people when they do. But to act like that Veritas did not actually expose corruption when they published these videos, it's absurd. They try and claim that Veritas deceptively edits or lies, but they're doing basically what many other news organizations do. In fact, there's another prominent UK organization that did basically the same thing recently. Now, I could be getting the details wrong, but I believe that had something to do with opposing Brexit. It made Brexit look bad. So all of a sudden, this undercover secret filming is okay, but not when James O'Keefe does it. But let's be real. What we're seeing now, nobody covering the story, it says to me, look, James O'Keefe uncovered 2 big stories. The first is about Epstein. We get it. But more importantly, now with this cover-up and the way they've smeared James O'Keefe, we're learning these media companies will not tell the truth. They're lying. We heard what she said in a private moment. Amy Robach said, we had everything. And when caught, they say, we couldn't corroborate the details. That's strange. I'm pretty sure she said we had everything. I'm pretty sure she said we had photographs. Come on. They didn't have photographs of Kavanaugh. We had corroborating witnesses. There were no corroborating witnesses in the Kavanaugh case. In fact, the witnesses denied knowledge of it. So ABC News, no. What we're seeing here is exactly why they smear Project Veritas. Is James O'Keefe and Veritas perfect? No, of course not. Is every story they do the biggest bombshell in the world? No, of course not. Sometimes they're quite small. But they smear James, and I will tell you, watching the work he's done, the fact that he's publishing this and calling out the media, this is why they don't like him. They don't want to talk about it. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, NBC News, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit they do wrong. Because when you talk about this cover-up, it brings up the other ones. Matt Lauer, it brings up Weinstein, and at least I can give credit to Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes for calling out their own network over the Ronan Farrow issue. Look, we can complain about the bad opinions of these personalities, but that was very principled of them to challenge their own network, and that is respectable. Tucker Carlson says stuff about this too. He's not going to rag on Rachel Maddow for her opinions, so she has bad opinions. But when so in this instance, you have news organizations refusing to cover the story. I'm not going to speak as to why now MSNBC's personalities did not cover the story, but I have to say this. The video got, I think, 3.5 million views on Twitter within 12 hours. It got 2 million views, roughly, within 12 hours. It was possibly one of the fastest viral videos in history. I don't know for sure, but I know that getting 7 or 8 million views in 12 hours is massive. Here's the important takeaway, though. Fox News, they make their point. Check this out. James O'Keefe says, well, Brian Stelter of CNN, you were forced to cover it. But you didn't have the balls to mention Project Veritas by name. You labeled us an activist group. FYI, there are more network insiders One day you will be face to face. Their heads will be held high, yours in shame. And here's what Brian Stelter said. He said, in a video obtained, Vox's Jane Coaston reports, in a video obtained by a right-wing pro-Trump activist group, ABC's Amy Robach complains to a producer off-air that she had convinced one of Epstein's victims, Virginia Roberts, to speak on the record about the allegations against Epstein. In another newsletter, they mentioned that it was CNN saying it was mostly the right-wing commentators that were upset. Apparently, Brian and his crew don't know how to do journalism. One of the points I made earlier today was that I took the YouTube video from James O'Keefe and I searched for it on Reddit. And you know what I found? I found the Bernie Sanders subreddit, the Donald Trump subreddit, the Libertarian subreddit. It is not just on the right. The left doesn't like the establishment. And the joke going around is that it's not even a joke, it's serious. Nobody believes the official story about what they're claiming that happened to Epstein. And the fact that ABC News spiked this story, so did several others like I covered on yesterday's video, nobody believes it, left or right. To claim it is a right-wing talking point. No, it's because you ignored it. Because the media is biased towards the left and they don't want to accept responsibility for protecting the elites. Could it be as simple as a story that implicated Clinton would hurt her election chances? So 3 years ago, ABC News said we're not going to cover it. I don't know why they spiked the story, but I think it's fair to say that their reason is absolutely false. That they can run footage from Kentucky. Nobody fact-checked that? That was up to your standards? It was from a show in Kentucky. They claimed it was Middle East, and it wasn't. I got to be careful how I talk about this because this is the kind of issue that gets these videos, shut down on YouTube. But check this out. As I mentioned earlier, a respected journalist, a HuffPost contributor, New York Magazine, Yashar Ali, is widely respected left and right because he's a good dude. He tells it like it is. And once again, here is Yashar Ali telling it like it is. You can tell that he's a big fan of elephants. I don't blame him. He makes good points, but I digress. He said, ABC News dealt with a firestorm after Project Veritas published the video of A. Robach talking about her Epstein story in a hot mic moment. But ABC News tells me they don't plan to cover the controversy and will also not be addressing it on air. First, I will point out that Yashar was able to mention Project Veritas without adding a caveat or a smear, without saying it's a right-wing activist group. No, he just said Project Veritas. It's that simple. And that's why people respect Yashar, among other reasons. He says, too, it's rather extraordinary that the news division of one of the 3 broadcast networks is not going to address a major controversy involving a huge story by either having someone read a statement on air, but more importantly, with having one of its reporters cover it as a story. Not giving NBC News any credit for this, because it's what they should have done, but they covered the allegations in Ronan Farrow's book via digital stories and in on-air segments. It appears that ABC News is trying to sweep this controversy under the rug by refusing to address this matter on air and by declining to cover it as a news story. They have not denied the legitimacy of the video. That is one of the most important points. They have not denied the legitimacy of the video. In fact, Amy Robach said it was a personal moment of frustration. I have a question for you. They said, we didn't air the story because we didn't have the details. Here's my question. In the end of that video, Amy Robach says, she essentially, I got to be careful here. I do not want to get this video shot down. She essentially says, do I believe the official report of what happened to Epstein? She says no. And then when asked about the more conspiratorial view, she says, do I believe it? 100%. I knew. She goes, the moment they came out, I knew. There's a meme going around, and I can't say it because of the nature of this video. I do not want to give an excuse to YouTube to strike this video down. And it's I got to stress this point. I've had people message me saying, Tim, you can't self-censor this way. I just had a video completely blocked. So how about that? No video, or I do my best to share as much information as I can. I can't tell you what the right thing to do is. I can understand the frustration, but I want to make sure we all know what these companies are doing. Why won't they cover it? CNN, MSNBC, CBS. Why not? Well, I got a couple more points to make. First, you are to stand down Ronan Farrow's producer on how NBC killed its Weinstein story. Farrow also mentioned that Hillary Clinton's people tried to stop him or were concerned. I got to be careful about how I describe this. And it was described by BuzzFeed as power protecting power. I believe that was a quote. Yeah, they tried to protect the powerful elites even though they do wrong. It's crazy, isn't it? I'll make a few more points here. Mike Cernovich apologized to Eric Wempel of the Washington Post, and I felt like this was very important to include because it shows you how someone like Cernovich, for all his faults, smeared relentlessly in the media, almost immediately apologizes and retracts his claim that the Washington Post did not cover the story on Project Veritas. He says, I would like to officially issue an apology and retraction, as Eric Wempel did indeed report about Epstein Cover Up. I didn't see his story. The error is mine alone. This is the difference between mainstream media, corporate media, and independent personalities. Mike was wrong. He got called out. He had to apologize immediately. You can hate Mike. You can criticize him all you want. I am not here to talk about his character, for the most part, like his politics. I'm here to talk about the fact that he immediately apologized. What about ABC News? What did they do? They deflected, even though we have video of Amy Robach saying all these things. They deflect from it. And now, as we're seeing from Yasher, it seems like their goal is to sweep this under the rug. You want to know what's the craziest thing to me about all this? That I had to go to Fox News, of all places, to get the story. Now, obviously, I follow Project Veritas. So when I saw the tweets going out, they were going to launch this story, I was immediately interested. Even the Washington Post story, as much as they did give credit to Veritas over this, the Epstein story, they claimed his CNN story was, I'm trying to remember. That's the quote they said. Something like, did it have an impact? I'm trying to remember, as if it didn't. And that's crazy to me. The Veritas video on CNN showed the president of the company intervening, but more importantly, believing that fact-based news from Politico was a conspiracy theory. That informs their whole network. You can see how the bias in media operates, but at least Wempel did do the story and praised Veritas, saying this one is airtight. There are many, and the Daily Beast as well. It's that many outlets did cover this. But why is it only Fox News when it comes to the major cable channels? Why is it only Fox News? Well, I've got a story I want to share with you that I think is particularly humorous. I've shared it several times because it's quite possibly the greatest example of the problems we're facing right now in media. Reuters reported October 24th, watch Fox News. You likely think the U.S. economy is great. MSNBC viewers, not so much. Interesting. How could somebody who watches Fox News think the economy is good, but someone who watches MSNBC think it's not good? Well, I did a simple Google search. I asked the question, is the economy good? Well, here's the Washington Post. The economy is in good shape, but two big clouds hang over it. Here are the economic issues that will define the year. They say the economy is perhaps the president's best hope. The Trump campaign clearly thinks it has a good economic yada yada. We've seen from forecast models for Trump, the economy is good. Trump says the economy is greatest. Powell says it's in a good place. Both are wrong, so maybe a little negative there. Trump's economy is working for minorities. The Atlantic claims the tax cuts didn't work. Why more air traffic is good for a city's economy has nothing to do with anything. Feds Evans, the New York Times, U.S. economy in good place. So there's more stories. I did a Google search because I didn't want to pull up one source and just claim everyone thinks everything is great. For the most part, even the BBC says the economy, it's good. Not the greatest, it's good. So why then would MSNBC viewers think the economy was bad? Well, we can now see exactly how this plays out. Because if you watch Fox News, you know about the cover-up. You know about ABC News spiking the story. I don't want to necessarily say cover up, because that implies so much. So I'll make sure I make that caveat now, even though it doesn't matter because I understand how the media likes to cut things out of context. But if you watch Fox News, you would be correct in assuming the economy is good. Is it the greatest? No, I don't know. Some people say it's not so great. Some people say it's great. But most forecast models, most news, it's good. Okay, so Fox News is more in line with the average view of what's going on. Moody's Analytics, the economy is good. You're going to know the truth if you watch Fox News. If you watch MSNBC, you probably didn't hear about this. You did not hear that ABC News tried to cover this up. You also don't know the economy is good or you think it's bad. That's fake news. You're not getting the truth. I'm not going to pretend like Fox News isn't a biased outlet. Fox News certainly has their opinion hosts. Their daytime news coverage tends to be fine. But take a look at CNN. CNN, exposed by Veritas, actually believed that fact-based reporting from Politico was a conspiracy theory. If you watch these networks, you have a skewed view of reality. And so herein lies the big problem. Why is the left entrenched in fake news? Because the media is in it for the money, they're in it for the political power, and they don't care about anything else. While Fox News also has played games in the past with their opinion people. Look, I don't care what your bias is. All of these networks play similar games where it's like during the Obama years, they'll complain about Obama. During the Trump years, they'll defend Trump. It's a double standard across the board. But you know what? I'm not going to complain about the past. I want to talk to you about what's happening today. I can criticize Fox for the things they've done in the past. Bill O'Reilly saying sun goes up, sun goes down, you can't explain it, or whatever it is he said. You can. But Fox News today is going to share with you information that is relevant and true. And ABC News will cover up the story for years. CNN, MSNBC, etc. will barely touch it if they would at all. CNN will reference Vox's reporting on it, not the actual story from Veritas. So let me make one thing clear and wrap this up. The media wants to cover up the cover-up for whatever reason, but I think it's simple. They don't want to be held accountable. They want to keep making money. They want to push their narrative and worldview, and they don't want you to challenge those in power. They are establishment players, and they defend the establishment. And now here's the important part. Think about every smear you've heard about Project Veritas and go prove it. If you think Project Veritas is lying, then I want you to go and search for evidence they have. The problem is when Veritas challenges these big institutions, even going back 10 years or so, it was only 9 years, to the Jon Stewart Daily Show videos. There's an interview with O'Keefe where they mention, actually, no, I believe this may have been ABC, or it may have actually been ABC. They say that Veritas views the media as a liberal establishment. Yep. So what do you think happens then when O'Keefe challenges them? But I'll leave you with one more important point. If James O'Keefe is exposing CNN and Facebook and Google, and you want to claim these institutions are not biased, how could you then assert that James O'Keefe is a conservative for targeting these institutions? You see the logic? You see the logic here? I understand there's a lot of reasons why you might call him a conservative, but just because he's challenging powerful institutions doesn't make him a conservative, does it? Unless you're conceding that he's targeting these organizations because they're left-leaning. Now you can say he thinks they're left-leaning, but come on. He goes after big, powerful institutions like Google, Facebook, CNN, ABC News, and then they smear him or ignore the story outright, CNN barely wanting to cover it. Yes, because these organizations are biased towards the left, and whether on purpose or just through their perspective and the people they are, they help propel a left-wing narrative. Well, listen, at the end of the day, left and right are concerned about the Epstein story. But the establishment left, at least that's where they're at right now, because Trump wiped out the establishment Republicans. The establishment left is holding on for dear life, and they will do everything to make sure this story doesn't make it. So I'll leave it there. The media covering up the cover-up. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at youtube.com/TimCastNews at 6 p.m., and I will see you all there.